Shmura. So many words.
How do you write Ashira in Hebrew?
With an ayin. Ashira. Rich. Matzah Shmura. Then there's something called, I'll say it in the plural this time, Matzot Yad. Or Matzot Mechona. Lots of words. You're right, matzah is called lechemoni. You're right, Aaron, it's true. The lechemoni, the Torah calls it the bread of affliction, or the bread of poverty, or the bread of discussion points. We spoke about that yesterday, that we speak about the bread, we tell the story about the bread, so it's lechem that we speak about, that we verbalize. But now we're getting to more practical, technical, different types of matzah. And what other words do we use? Let's see if there's any more.
Do you have matzah Israel?
No. We have matzah. You're going to see this on the packages. You got to know what to buy. Matzah. Sometimes I use the H and sometimes I don't. I should be consistent. Matzah chai regaim. We have to learn what all these mean. Matzah is the primary mitzvah of the night. And it's the primary food of the holiday. What's the other mitzvah, d'oraita, on the night of the Seder?
Tell the story.
To tell the story, that's right. Those are the two big ones. The truth is, if you, nowadays, Aaron, you with me? Nowadays, we only once a year have a mitzvah to eat, where the eating itself is a mitzvah. When there was a temple, every time you ate a korban, the meat, that was a mitzvah, to eat the mitzvah of the korban. And of course there is a mitzvah, there is a mitzvah to eat on Shabbat, but it's not the eating itself, which is a mitzvah. You're celebrating Shabbat. You're not celebrating the bread. This is the only time a year the eating itself is the mitzvah. The Torah says you must eat this food at this time. Very, very special eating. So let's take a look, please, at page 163. Behind you, there's a few more books. Stephen, thank you. Chapter 12 in Pnei Halacha, page 163. Good morning, Gabriel. How are you? Okay. Good. The mitzvah of eating matzah. Hananel, how are you today? Good to see you bright and early. Will you read for us, please, the mitzvah of eating matzah? Yes, please.
It is a Torah commandment to eat matzah on the night of the 15th of the month of Nisan. It says, in the evening you shall eat matzot. Even though the Torah also says you shall eat matzot for 7 days. It says infer based on the rules of rule for interpreting the Torah. The Torah does not mean command us to eat matzot all 7 days, but rather their matzah is a staple food that we eat on Pesach instead of bread. However, who wants to live off fruits, vegetables, meat, and dairy products may do so. The simple meaning of this is that one who is not all 7 days of Pesach does not thereby fulfill the mitzvah. This is what the state meant when they say that keeping matzah during the 7 days is voluntary. Yet many leading halakhic authorities
Okay, stop there for a second. Okay, so do you have your pages from yesterday? The ones, the chart that I gave you. This chart, the latest version, where it says on the back the list of features of Jewish tradition. Those of you who were here yesterday should have it. Otherwise, I might have a few more here. Who needs one? Pass this down, please. So if you look at the Jewish tradition major features and terminology, you see this chart I gave you? I want you to look for a minute at section 4, line 4. Yeah, does everybody have this? Maybe give one extra for Hananel, just in case. He didn't get one. Anybody else need one? Maybe for Israel. Okay. So you see number 4, it says that the Torah was transmitted, tradition. Number 4, you see number 4, line number 4. The transmitted tradition is called, what's it called, transmitted tradition? Mesorah. Number 4. And also there's also chidush, inspired innovation, new things. Now, we interpret the Torah. Interpretation is called Perush. And there's 4 ways of interpreting the Torah. Pshat, Remez, Drash, and Sod. PRDS. Pshat, Remez, Drash, and Sod. Simple meaning, hints in the Torah, things we learn out from the Torah, and Sod is the secrets of the Torah. This is a nice acronym. Pardes, the word Pardes means...
Like
no, orchard. An orchard. It's like there's an orchard of interpretation. Many different ways of interpreting. But most importantly, what you have to recognize is that when the Torah was given to us, there was a written Torah together with an oral Torah. We mentioned that in number 3, right? You see number 3 on your page is the written Torah and the oral Torah, which go all the way back to Sinai. And part of that oral Torah was how to interpret the Torah, how to derive things out of the Torah. That's in number 4, the last line, exegesis. It's a funny word, huh? It's nothing to do with Jesus. Exegesis, it means to derive, to pull things out from a text. Derivation. In Hebrew, derasha. The sages, their job is lidrosh et HaTorah via the 13 principles. The 13 principles with which the Torah is nidreshet. You hear the word drasha? Nidreshet bahem. The 13 principles through which the Torah gets interpreted. Dear Stephen, I'm so sorry to interrupt your drink.
Yeah.
It's so good to drink. Could you give everybody a siddur, please, from behind you?
Yeah.
Israel, you can help him, so it's not too hard for him. A siddur. That's not a siddur. Yeah, it's okay. I know. L'chaim. Every day in the prayers, we recite the 13 principles of exegesis. You'll get used to the word, hopefully, if I say it over and over. Some people call them the interpretive principles. Page 92 in the Koren Rav Kook Siddur. Every day. Now, some of you skip that part. So that's why it's still news to you. But if you say every word in the Siddur, it's there on page 32. It's right, 92. It's right before. Where does it come before? What's the next thing after Kiddush? It's after Korbanot and before Psukei de Zimra. Exactly, right before Psukei de Zimra. Many synagogues only begin at Psukei de Zimra, the public communal prayer service. Everybody is expected to be saying by themselves the first 92 pages of the Siddur. Sometimes the Chazan will start with page 92 and read the 13 principles of Rabbi Ishmael, because afterwards there's a Kaddish. And in order to say the Kaddish, people who are mourners or people who are commemorating their loved ones, they have the custom to recite the Kaddish after we finish the Korbanot section, after we finish Rabbi Ishmael. Rabbi Ishmael was a Tana. He's famously known for being the friend and partner and competitor to another Tana that's more familiar to you, known as Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva and Yishmael were the great leaders, Tanaim, sages. Period 4. Yeah, you with me? And here we have a nice list. He tells you how to interpret the Torah. This is a tradition passed down. How not only the Torah was given, but how to read the Torah and how to derive new things from the Torah. So, for example, first let's look at this and then I'll give you an example. Rabbi Ishmael says, the Torah is expounded by 13 principles. An inference from a lenient law to a strict one. In Hebrew, that's kal v'chomer. You might have heard that before. Number 1 is the most famous one. It's actually a logical principle. When you read the Torah, it's not just about being careful about the text. You have to use your logic as well. You infer things. Number 2 is an inference drawn from identical words in 2 passages. You might have heard about that. Then there's number 3, a general principle derived from one text or 2 related texts. A general law followed by specific examples, and many different versions of that. We have a lot of different rules of how to interpret if the Torah presents a general rule and then a specific, it's different than if it first presents the specific example and then gives us the general rule. We have rules for how the Torah should be interpreted. And so, this is Rabbi Ishmael's 13 principles. You have it in your Siddur. You can recite it every day and then you'll get to know it off by heart maybe. But more importantly to know is that when we read the Torah, we read the Torah through the lens of the sages. The interpretation based on these 13 principles, that's what you have here, number 4. Derivations, drasha, via the 13 midot. Midot are principles or interpretive principles. Shehatorah nidreshet bahem. Nidreshet. The Torah it's a passive word. The Torah is derived from or read or analyzed through these 13 methods of analysis, of derivation, of interpretation. So, why am I mentioning this now? Because this is just what happened about matzah. Our topic is matzah. This was a little brief. What does it say in the Torah about matzah? There's a contradiction. The Holy Torah from God has a contradiction? This is no stranger to us. We're familiar with that. The Torah is filled with contradictions. It's a strange feature, but it is a feature nonetheless. How are we supposed to understand the Torah? Is this verse correct or is that verse correct? We know the answer is both verses are correct. How to interpret what the Torah is trying to teach us? We use the words of the sages. The sages came along and said, in one place, You must eat matzah for 7 days. Chag HaMatzot. The whole festival is called the Festival of Matzot. It sounds like the mitzvah is to eat matzah for 7 days. There's another pasuk though. The other pasuk says, in the evening of the 15th shall you eat matzot. So which is it? 7 days or one night? It's a contradiction. The sages, either with their wisdom or with a tradition, they gave us the bottom line. What do the Jewish people, how do we understand the mitzvah of the Torah? As Rabbi Melamed said to us, the sages, let's read this passage again, 163, chapter 12. We'll read it again from the top. Hananel, one more time. You did so beautifully the first time. I'd like you to read the first paragraph again. Again. Because now we'll understand it better. Okay, Hananel. It is a Torah commandment.
It is a Torah commandment to eat matzah on the night of the 15th of the month of Nisan. As it says, in the beginning you shall eat matzot. Even though the Torah also says you shall eat matzot for 7 days, the says infer based on the rules for interpreting the Torah. The Torah does not mean to command us to eat matzot all 7 days, but rather that matzah is a stable food that we eat on Pesach instead of bread. However, one who wants to live off food, just bread,
You're doing fine.
vegetables, meat, and dairy products may do so.
So how did the sages interpret the Torah? When is it a mitzvah to eat the matzah?
The night.
Only one night a year. What about the 7 days? The Torah calls it 7 days of eating matzah.
You can eat it.
You can if you want to, but you don't have to. When it said that you should eat matzah, they didn't mean that you must eat matzah. The Torah meant that we replace the staple, usually is bread, you replace it with matzah for those 7 days. But you don't have to eat matzah if you don't want to. Some people have matzah is very hard for their stomach to digest. So when do they have to eat matzah? Only the first night, really, is the mitzvah from the Torah. Now there is another day, another problem that maybe they should eat matzah because they want to have a Shabbat meal. And they can't have challah, so they should have the equivalent of bread with matzah for the sake of Shabbat. There's a Shabbat on Pesach too. Maybe there's also a Yom Tov, or even 2 days of Yom Tov. The first day and the seventh day of Pesach are Yamim Tovim. There are special holidays where you're supposed to have 2 meals, 2 festive meals, not 3 like on Shabbat, but 2 festive meals. You want to fulfill those meals properly, you should have bread. What's the bread on Pesach? It's matzah. So you sort of have to eat matzah a little more, but not because it's an obligation to eat the mitzvah of eating matzah. That's only on the first night. The way our sages interpret. Using the interpretive rules. What do we call them? The 13 midot shehatorah nidreshet bahem. The 13 interpretive principles who were expounded by who? Rabbi Yishmael. Rabbi Yishmael. We saw it on page 92 of the Siddur. Okay, the 13 interpretive principles. It's in line number 4. Got that? So this is fascinating. You know what? Other people might have said a different interpretation. Maybe you have to eat matzah every single day of the 7 days. We follow the sages. The sages interpreted, no, the verse that says in the evening, that's the primary commandment. The other 7 days are optional. So far, so good? You with me?
Yes.
However, yet, now I'm going to skip to where Hananel left off, 3 lines into the second paragraph. Yet, many leading halachic authorities have written that although eating matzah is obligatory only at the Seder, and indeed that is why the sages instituted the special blessing over the eating of the matzah at the Seder only, nevertheless, one who eats matzah on the other days of Pesach still fulfills a mitzvah, even if it is not obligatory. This is an interesting concept. You're not obliged to eat matzah on day 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. But if you do, you get a mitzvah. It's a very interesting concept. Sometimes, most mitzvot are things that you must do at this particular time. So is the mitzvah of matzah. You must eat matzah when? On the first night of Pesach, on the night of the Seder, the 15th of Nisan. You must. What about the rest of the week? Some people say, if you want to, you can. If you don't, you don't. No problem. You don't have to. It's just a custom. You could say it's a custom, sure. But you're not allowed to have bread. So if you want to fill up your belly and you want to eat, what else are you going to put your butter on? If not your bread, you put it on matzah. So you eat matzah. Now Rav Melamed introduced that there's a second opinion. That it's actually not just a choice. It's up to you. It is up to you. But if you do eat matzah, it's considered to be fulfilling a mitzvah. You can have a mitzvah, why not? Well, maybe if your stomach hurts, then you won't want to. You don't have to. You have to on the first night, even if your stomach's going to hurt. First night, obligatory. Positive obligation. This is, in this view, again, it's not the standard view, but there is such a view that the rest of the week, if you do eat matzot, you get a mitzvah. Yes.
It's like to give tzedakah.
Yeah.
Do it. It's not you must do it, but when you do it, it's a very important big mitzvah.
Correct. When someone turns to you and asks you for money, and you have money, and they need money, it might be a mitzvah to respond in kind. But if they don't turn to you, you can choose to go out and search them and give them tzedakah, and then you're doing a mitzvah, even though you were not necessarily obligated, because and they're not here. Why should I give anybody tzedakah? So you're absolutely right. It's a good example. It's a good example. It's a type of mitzvah. If you do it, you fulfill a mitzvah, but if you don't, you haven't violated anything. Okay. Another question? So yeah,
like when you give tzedakah on your birthday, it's a bigger mitzvah.
I've heard that. Some people make a big deal about birthdays. My father wasn't big on birthdays. The truth is, Judaism, the tradition, is not really big on birthdays. The Lubavitcher Rebbe was in favor of marking your birthday, and he said you should be a day for cheshbon nefesh, introspection, and ask yourself, are you fulfilling your mission, your purpose in life, and all those kinds of things. Not so much wearing the party hat and blowing out the candles on the cake. That's not what the Lubavitcher Rebbe was excited about. I love birthday cake, though, and I like having a party, but it's not really part of Jewish tradition. But there are some customs where people turn it into a very significant day. One way to do that, other than introspection, of course, is to do good deeds, to give tzedakah. But you don't have to do it on your birthday as opposed to any other day, okay?
Does the Tanakh ever mention...
It's one birthday mentioned in the Chumash. One birthday mentioned in the Chumash, and it might give you an indication about how central this is to Jewish tradition.
Which birthday?
Who has a birthday in the Chumash?
Pharaoh.
Exactly. Pharaoh, the king of Egypt. He's the one who's mentioned he had a birthday. So that's not really our thing, but by all means, you should use as a day for doing good deeds and introspection. It's good. Yechanel, you want to ask? Yeah.
something like CDC.
Yeah.
So it's also a mitzvah, right?
Yeah.
CDC.
Right. Right.
To fulfill my mitzvah, something like that. I don't want. I don't feel. I don't want making something like that.
Yeah.
But to fulfill the mitzvah,
Mhm.
get something like that.
Right. So each mitzvah has its rules, has its laws. So the rule that you're mentioning now is that you should have 3 meals on Shabbat. It is a rabbinic law. They learned it, they anchor it in the verse. It says Hayom 3 times by the man which the Jewish people ate in the desert. It says the word Hayom 3 times. So we understand that you should have 3 meals on Shabbat. I want you to understand that in ancient times, the standard was 2 meals a day, all week long. Shabbat, we want to especially honor it, we'll have 3 meals. So this is the idea that the sages said, and this is a mitzvah from the sages, you should have 3 meals on Shabbat. Su'udah shlishit, the 3rd meal. Now the question is, what defines a meal? Standard answer from the sages, from the Talmud, is it's a meal with bread. Okay, a meal with bread. Now, some people say, I get to the 3rd meal, and I've already had bread at 2 meals. I'm too full, especially in the short Shabbat in the wintertime.
That was the breakfast.
Yeah, you had kiddush, you've been eating all day. I can't eat more bread. So the halacha actually says that the 3rd meal has a little bit of special rules. Is that if you can't eat bread, you can fulfill it with cake and cookies. And if you can't have cake and cookies, you can fulfill it with a fruit or a vegetable or some fish or meat or other kind of food that as long as it's a nice meal. And other people say there's even more lenient rules. What if you can't even can't even have that? I know in Chabad they have a tradition. You know how they fulfill the 3rd meal?
Learning Torah.
Learning Torah.
Wow.
It's a little bit of a stretch. The sages said 3 meals of food. They meant food. And okay, if you're too full, you can't have bread for whatever reason, there's room to be lenient. But ideally, you should be having 3 meals with bread. Sometimes life is not ideal. There's all sorts of situations. There are times when I feel I just can't eat anymore, and I just have a piece of cake, or I have a little bite to eat to mark the Sudah Shlishit. I try, and we have usually a full meal with 2 loaves of bread, 3 times on Shabbat, and recently my wife has been making challah out of flour made from spelt, kusmin. And I find that easier to digest. It's easier on my stomach than the regular wheat flour. But whatever it is. So that's an interesting question, Hananel, about Shabbat. The only connection to what we're saying now is that, during Pesach, if there's a Shabbat, you should have 3 meals with matzah, if you can.
But the Torah is ochel for your nefesh.
Nice. You're a Chabadnik at heart. Okay, other questions? Someone else? Yeah.
Yeah, so Rabbi, so during these 7 days, every time we eat matzah, so we get a mitzvah.
According to some authorities. Not everybody agrees with that. You can see in the footnotes, primarily it's known as the opinion of the Gra, the Gaon from Vilna, Rabbi Eliyahu from Vilna, but there are others too. But the standard approach is that the rest of the days of Pesach, there's no mitzvah to eat matzah. There's no mitzvah to eat matzah. There's only one night. And that's what we're going to focus on. The first night of Pesach, the mitzvah to eat matzah. Okay? And we're going to see there's many different... What type of matzah should you eat? There's so many types of matzah. So let's get into it, okay? This was all. We're getting to what we're trying to define. There's eating of matzah on the first night. There's eating of matzah for the rest of the week. Let's see what the laws are. Take a look at section 2. Turn the page to page 164. And I'll ask Eitan to read for us. Please. Oh, wait. We're going to find out what this means. Okay, you wrote it down? Yeah, so let's read what it means, and then you'll write it down in your notes what the answer is, what shmura matzah is. Go ahead. What's shmura matzah?
The Torah states, and you shall observe,
Ushmartem. It's a Hebrew word, shmura. Shmura, lishmor. What does lishmor mean? You're going to the army. You have to know what lishmor means. No. It could also mean to store, but keep also in the army. What does it mean? To guard. Shomer. This is shomer. Lishmor is to guard duty. You're going to do a lot of guard duty. You have to guard the matzot. Do we have to have a gun? It says ushmartem et hamatzot. You should guard the matzot. Whoa, boy! I better go get a gun. Pesach's coming. I have to guard my matzot. How do I guard the matzot? Let's take a look. He says, go ahead. The sages interpreted.
The sages interpreted this to mean that the matzah must be guarded from becoming chametz. It refers specifically to the matzah eaten on the Seder night. In fulfillment of the mitzvah, for the very next verse states, in the evening you shall eat matzot. The other matzot on each one Pesach are like any other food. They may be eaten as long as there is no concern that they may have become chametz. However, we have been commanded to guard carefully the matzah used for the mitzvah on Seder night from becoming chametz. Such matzah is called shmura matzah. Ideally, the wheat that will be used for the matzot should be guarded from when it is harvested. It is customary to harvest that wheat is still a bit moist, for if it were to dry out completely and then get drenched by rain, it will become chametz. Similarly, later on, the grains must be stored where they will not come into contact with water. One may also fulfill the mitzvah of eating shmura matzah with matzot that were guarded from the time that the wheat was grounded into flour, as long as the wheat kernels showed no signs of becoming chametz and nothing has happened that will undermine the presumption that they are not chametz. One need to be concerned that they had become wet and become chametz. However, this is not the best kind of shmura matzah, since it was guarded only from the time of grinding.
Okay, good. So, in order that we don't have chametz, we're going to now explain that there's two types of shmura. There's two levels of matzah shmura. Mi she'at ketzira and mi she'at techina. What is techina? No. I got you. Techina is delicious, right? But in this context, it actually means ground up. Because what the techina that we eat is ground up sesame seeds. But techina just means to be ground. It's one of the 39 categories of work on Shabbat. You're not allowed to do tochen, grinding. So, in order to not be chametz, it's good enough to watch to look at the kernels and to guard the flour that no water gets in from the moment of grinding. Right? Techina is grinding. However, for the matzah of the first night, you might also call it matzat mitzvah, the matzah which you're going to fulfill. We're going to see there's another meaning of that too in just a minute. You must use matzah which was guarded even earlier from harvesting. Ketzira, also a word we used in the laws of Shabbat, to harvest, cutting it off. So when you harvest the wheat from the field, from that moment you should be shomer, guarding it. Misha'at means from the time.
But how that happens nowadays?
Exactly like that. The rabbis go out to the field together with the harvesting combines or whatever machines they use, or maybe they do it by hand, and they make sure that all the kernels are not puffed up, that they're still a little bit moist. They haven't dried out at all, so that they can get. They're still moist. They're still. There's no chance that they become chametz, and they harvest them, and then they store them under lock and key. I don't think you need a gun, but you do have to make sure that there's no moisture in the container, in the truck. They put it into a freezer right away. Even before they grind it into flour, they guard the wheat berries from the field. Misha'at ketzira, from the time of harvest. This is a special matzah. Most matzot are not shmura matzah. You have to pay extra to get shmura matzah. You have to pay extra to get shmura matzah. And you really should buy enough matzah, shmura matzah, in Hebrew, matzah shmura. It'll say on the package, matzah shmura misha'at ketzira. This is what you're looking for in the package. Matzah shmura misha'at ketzira. Not only from the grinding, every matzah, all the other matzot, they have to be separate from water. You don't want them to become chametz. But it's good enough if you watch it from the time of the grinding. But for the Seder night, you should buy matzah shmura misha'at ketzira. How much do you need to buy? Enough for one night, right? For the first night. The rest of the week. It's not a mitzvah to eat matzah the rest of the week. Maybe you get a mitzvah, according to some opinions, if you do it, and there is therefore a custom that buy matzah shmura for the entire week. But you don't have to. You have to for the first night. The standard halacha is the mitzvah is only on the first night. And that's why we have to be careful to buy some matzah shmura for the first night. Take a look on the top of page 166. Top of page 166, first paragraph. Read it, Eitan, in practice.
In practice, today customs is to be scrupulous.
Let's be careful.
About shmura matzah. Matzot that have been guarded from the time of harvest are used to fulfill the mitzvah of eating matzah on the Seder night. This practice has taken root
Thoroughly.
The people have come to call matzah that has been guarded only from the time of grinding. Non-shmura matzah, even though it is considered shmura halachically, and one may use it to fulfill the mitzvah of eating matzah.
Right, like I was telling you, this misha'at techina, it really is technically also matzah shmura. But we're very careful. For the mitzvah, for the first night of eating matzah, we take shmura only if it was guarded all the way back from the field, from the time of harvesting. Okay? Even though technically, Ramadan, it says that really, as long as it's been guarded from the grinding, that's also considered matzah shmura. The custom is to be machmir. What's machmir? Stringent. Do we have it on our pages? Yeah, the last line, number 9, has lahachmir, machmir, be stringent. And number 9 on the pages. Okay? What else? Now, we want to fulfill the mitzvah of eating matzah on the first night. First thing you've got to do is get matzahs which were guarded from the time of harvesting, right? Matzah shmura. There's something else that maybe you should be careful about. Go ahead, page 166, number 3. Gabriel, read for us number 3.
does the guarding have to be with the intent to fulfill a mitzvah? Guarding the matzot to be used for fulfilling the mitzvah of eating matzah on the Seder night has two implications. Being extra vigilant to prevent it from becoming chametz, and having the intention that the matzah is to be used for the mitzvah. The Shem Matzah Mitzvah. It is therefore necessary that the matzah be kneaded and baked by Jews who are halachic adults, who can be relied upon both to guard against fermentation and to keep in mind that their actions are for the sake of matzah mitzvah. One may not employ Gentiles, minors, or mentally unfit workers to knead or bake matzah, since they cannot be relied upon to have the proper intent. Some dispute the second implication above. In their opinion, the mitzvah of guarding the matzah requires extra vigilance to prevent the matzah mitzvah from becoming hametz, but requires no special intent while doing it. Thus, the Gentiles and minors are fit to bake matzah mitzvah as long as an adult Jew supervises their work, ensuring that they work with alacrity and that the dough does not become hametz. In practice, at the time of kneading, one should take care of
To fulfill.
both means of guarding. Thus, one must insist Jews knead and bake the matzah mitzvah, taking care of the dough does not become hametz, and intending that the matzah be for the sake of the mitzvah. However, at the time of harvesting, the grinding the first mean is sufficient. Thus, the wheat may be harvested and ground by Gentiles as long as a Jew stands nearby and supervises their work, ensure that it does not become hametz.
Okay, stop there. So we have now a new condition for the matzah for the night of the Seder. It has to be matzat mitzvah. What does that mean? Matzah which was made with the intention for the mitzvah. Intention while making it for the mitzvah. And if you actually go to a bakery, you'll see a big sign on the wall in every matzah bakery. It says L'shem matzat mitzvah, and you'll hear people saying under their breath all the time, L'shem matzat mitzvah. I'm doing this for the sake of the baking matzah that can be used for the mitzvah of the first night of eating matzah on the first night of Pesach. So we have two conditions, shmura and intention. Guarding, that's technically, make sure that it's guarded, that it's watched from the time of harvesting, and that when they bake, at least when they're baking the matzah, that people who are doing the work should have intention that they're doing it to bake matzah, which can be used for this mitzvah. Yeah?
So, if I have matzah let's say I normally eat matzah. If I have matzah from like December, can I not eat it because it wasn't meant for the mitzvah?
So, yeah, usually it can be used because most matzah in the world is produced with this in mind. They know that most matzah is eaten on Pesach, and so all matzahs, pretty much all the bakeries, they make sure that it's done for the sake of the mitzvah, and then it stays for a year. But there are some matzot baked not for Pesach. We'll get into that later. We spoke about it a little bit when we mentioned the concept of matzah ashira, matzah made with fruit juice or something like that, which is maybe not used for the Seder because it's not lechem oni, it's not the bread of poverty, it's actually bread of richness. So rich matzah might be the exception to that, but most matzot are produced for the sake of the mitzvah. Okay, now comes the big question. So this condition has to be filled. It has to be the intention. And this condition, shmura, that it's guarded from the time of harvest, has to be filled. So we take this together, and the matzah shmura together. And now, this is the question. What is this matzah going to look like? If we make matzah with the intention for the mitzvah, we make matzah from shmura matzah, it can take two forms. square or round? Does it matter?
Same.
Why would it be any different?
Well, why not rectangle?
Why not rectangle? Why would it be any different?
The
ones
round
that
is
are-
handmade.
That's it. The ones that are round are usually made by hand. And the one that is rectangle are usually made by the machine.
Exactly.
And that's question. Which is better?
Handmade.
Who says?
Expensive.
Why? Why?
Because
Maybe a
it's
machine is better. Why would you say that the handmade's better? Why do you say the machine made's better?
Because when you make it by handmade, you do it with the intention.
There you go. The intention is easier when you do it by hand. But what is the other? There's groups. Some people say this is better. Some people say that's better. Why? What did the other people answer? The machine-made people, the squares. Why do they say that's better? Well, when I push the button on the machine, I have an intention. And then all the hours that the machine is working, it's from my intention.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
why not?
But when I make it by hand, it goes much more deeper.
Oh, the intention is deeper. Yeah, so some people prefer to have that because they say maybe there's more intention. But all the factories, like I was telling to Gabriel, all around the world, they all have the Shei Matzat Mitzvah right near the buttons where they push when they start the machines going, they're having the intention. Most poskim said that's good enough. It's good enough. If you start the process going and you're having the right intention, doesn't matter whether you use your fingers or you use a machine. Even when you use your fingers, sometimes you roll it with a machine. So maybe that's good enough. Why would some people say matzat mitzvah are better? Why were machines better than humans sometimes?
They can make mistakes.
There are less mistakes sometimes. If you're a human and you get a little bit, I'm tired, I'm lazy, I didn't look at the clock, we're going to see that you have to do it very quickly. Maybe there'll be mistakes, whereas if it's a machine, it's programmed.
Yes.
Everything goes like clockwork. It's in the oven, it's out of the oven, it's part of a conveyor belt, it's a system, no mistakes. Sometimes it's cleaner
Yes.
when you put baked matzahs with a machine than if you do it by hand because you got to clean up. They don't clean so well.
Every time you have the same size.
You always get the same size. It's more aesthetic maybe. But some people like the aesthetic of the hand.
It's tricky because
Yeah.
the people who set up the machine need also to do it as well.
It's true. It's true. You've got to be very careful when you set up the machines, and you get to start them. They have to have that intention. So this is the next debate. Let's read about it. On page 170. Okay, Stephen, you're on page 170.
There was a value in eating handmade matzot or Pesach. The mitzvah of guarding the matzot was stated about the matzah mitzvah. We are commanded to eat on the night of the 15th of Nisan. The idea is to honor the mitzvah by guarding them, especially carefully. In other words, matzot that are not guarded, but about which there is no concern that they may have become harmless, may be eaten on Pesach. They are just not fit for use as matzot mitzvah, since they are not guarded specifically for that purpose. Thus, throughout Pesach, it is permissible to eat matzah that is kosher for Pesach, even if it is not for Shemurah. Nevertheless, some are meticulous about eating Shemurah matzah throughout Pesach. There are two reasons for this. One is that some poskim maintain that while there is no duty to eat matzot throughout Pesach, one does not.
Who does so?
One who does so fulfill a mitzvah. Therefore, one should eat Shemurah matzah. According to this, it is sufficient to eat a ketzai of Shemurah matzah at every meal. Similarly, it is sufficient to use a regular matzot, not labeled as Shemurah, which have been gathered from the time of grinding, because as we have learned, one can fulfill the requirement of matzah mitzvah with matzah that have been grounded from the time of grinding. The second reason for eating Shumura Matzah is concerned about harvest. Out of all the food we eat on Pesach, Matzah is like the likeliest to become harvest. Therefore, if the wheat grain are not gathered from harvest time, there is concern that they may have become harvest. Thus, there is good reason to be stringent and eat only matzah that have been gathered from the harvest time. Today, the advantage of matzot that have been gathered from the harvest time is only in their having been protected from contact with water, since the grain was harvested. In general, much more care is taken throughout the entire manufacturing process. For example, the baking machine are stopped every 80 minutes for the thorough cleaning. Thus, this manzot benefit from the whole series of enhancements. In some regular manzot which have been gathered from the time of grinding are kosher for all of Pesach, like Katila. Even those who maintain that there is a mitzvah with manzot throughout the 7 days of Pesach agree that one fulfill the mitzvah with such manzot. Those who are scrupulous with manzot that have being grounded from harvest time, primarily because these manzot are more carefully guarded against become harvest.
Okay, that was actually not the issue we were looking for. This is the issue of should you eat matzah shmura for the rest of the week? And he's saying, some people say, I try to do that custom. I try to have shmura for the whole week. It's a little more expensive, not that too much expensive. And the reason why is because they're more careful about it. And but it's not really the biggest deal. But the question I wanted to show you is on page 168. The page just flipped one more page. We have to read 168 to answer our question, what do we do with the Seder? Okay? Number 4. Okay, you got that? Yisrael, you want to read for us maybe?
Yeah.
Number 4. It's on page 168. A great dispute raged.
It created to push at the ways and posting it even seen the investor of the truck baking machine and the disputed center on two principal questions. One, is there no concern that machine make muscle may become harmless? Can one use them to fulfill the mitzvah of eating matzah of the certain night? Considering the question of the harmless, it is agreed everything depends on the nature of the machine and on this supervision as long as they are supervisors who ensure that there is no risk on the harvest. The methods are crucial for the son choose even the most pious and the God-fearing Jews it make
Okay, Tov, are you okay?
No, I'm sick, but I want to try today because.
Refuah shlema.
Okay.
Are you well enough to come?
Sorry?
Yeah, okay, so
Yes,
come,
I'm
sit
okay.
down.
Otherwise I
Okay.
miss too much.
No, it's okay. You can always join. Get him a book, please.
This is the
Get him a
best
book.
remedy, right?
That's it. Torah is the best way. Just don't get us sick.
No.
Okay, so the first question is, machine-made matzahs, do they have chametz in them? Nowadays, they're very careful about the manufacturing process. They clean things, they clean the machines very carefully. Everybody really agrees that is not such a problem. There's no problem. If you have shmura flour, then you don't have to worry about chametz. Yeah.
Matzot need to be made by Jews, right?
If you need the intention, yes. For the sake of the mitzvah, yes.
What's about the machine?
So that's the second question. So Aaron, will you read the second question on page 168? The second question, however, is still debated.
Some say that the mitzvah of guarding the matzah requires that the entire process of kneading and baking the baking be done with explicit intent that they are l'shem matzah mitzvah. And since a machine cannot have intentions, one would not fulfill the mitzvah of eating matzah on the Seder night with machine-made matzah. Most poskim maintain that one can fulfill the mitzvah by eating machine-made matzot for several reasons. Firstly, some explain that the mitzvah of guarding the matzah only requires one to ensure that it does not become chametz, and it is irrelevant whether this is done while making the matzah by hand or by supervising the activity of a machine. Furthermore, a human being operates the machine, and if he operates it with the intent of making matzah mitzvah, then automatically all of the machine's operations are considered to have been done for the sake of the mitzvah. In practice, machine-made matzah may be used to fulfill the mitzvah of eating matzah on the Seder night. Many are
Scrupulous. Careful.
About fulfilling the mitzvah with handmade matzot that were baked under proper supervision. Although even they concede that it is not necessary to eat handmade matzot throughout the Seder meal. Rather, they beautify the mitzvah by eating handmade matzah for those kazai quantities that constitute the mitzvah.
That is my custom. You see in the footnote, there was wars by the manufacturers of the machines and the people. It's, we are a very conservative religion. Change is difficult. And when the machine baking matzahs started to become popular, it was a big change. We're used to having round matzah, not square matzah. What's this square matzah? That's not Jewish. So it's considered more traditional to have the round matzahs. They're handmade, and maybe they're even better because you have a more human intention when you're rolling out the dough and making the shape of the round matzah. Maybe that's more traditional. And so I usually invest a few extra shekels. And for the Seder, or at least for the Seder plate, I have the handmade matzah, although it's very, very, very expensive. The difference between regular matzah and matzah shmura from the harvest time, not such a big difference. You could say if you have a package of regular matzah for 10 shekels, the shmura matzah will be 12, 13, maybe 15 shekels. No big difference. But handmade matzah, maybe 100 shekels. That's a big difference. Bottom line is, Rabbi Melamed says, and I agree with him, you don't have to have handmade matzah. You can fulfill the mitzvah, even for the first night, with shmura matzah. That looks like a square. It's made by the machine. It's kosher. It's traditional to use the handmade, but you don't have to. If you don't have the money, it's fine. As long as it's shmura, it has to be shmura matzah. Ideally, that for the first night. For the rest of Pesach, I don't eat the handmade matzah. I eat machine-made. I try to have shmura matzah because it's even more guarded. than the rest. And as we saw, there are some opinions that say there's a mitzvah every day, every time you eat the matzah, so might as well have the shmura matzah, extra guarding as well, and for the extra few shekels, it's fine. But the hand matzah, that's not just a few extra shekels, that's maybe 10 times the price. So you don't have to eat shmura matzah. That meaning, it used to be that the difference between hand and machine was always the difference between shmura matzah and regular matzah. Nowadays, you can get machine-made shmura matzah. It just has to say on the package, matzah shmura, as opposed to regular matzah without the word shmura. Shmura mishat techina is regular. Shmura mishat kitzira is the special shmura matzah. This you should be very careful about. In terms of the intention, don't worry. If it says shmura on it, they have the intention when they turn on the machine, when they operate the machine. And if you want to have an extra special stringency, you get some hand shmura matzah for the Seder night. But I know people that want to eat only hand shmura matzah for the entire 7 days. Maybe they take out a loan because it's so expensive. Yeah.
Is it okay when I make my own matzot in home?
Good question. We're going to talk about that soon. It's usually it can be done, but you need to have some expertise. You need a rabbi really to make sure that you're doing it right. It's discouraged to make your own matzah at home unless you really you learn about how to make matzah. Boker Tov. Chom Shel Torah. Baruch Hashem.
I wanted to remind ourselves today could be the last shul Rabbi going in.
Wow.
Because next week,
Oh no.
it's cleaning mornings. I don't know if we're going to have Rabbi go further. Just tomorrow night, I just got confirmation we're having a model Seder. I met with Rabbi Franklin Dahl. He agreed to come and do it. And it's a lot of work, and we'll need some volunteers. You can bring your pillow, bring your machzor. We'll have the works, grape juice, maror, matzah.
Haggadah, not
And I'll bring your
machzor.
Haggadah as well.
Yeah.
It'll be a model Seder, 8:30 p.m. Frankenthal's been doing this, I don't know, for 15, 20 years. He wanted to stay until 3 in the morning. I said, no, until 12:1 is enough, whatever. Okay, so get ready for that. And we'll be able to publicize it on Facebook or something, whatever.
Sure. B'simcha. Okay. Questions about handmade versus machine-made matzahs for the night of the Seder and for the rest of the week as well. So we've learned almost now. There's another phrase that you're going to find. Please. There's another phrase you're going to find on page 172. The sages prohibited kneading the dough for Pesach matzot with lukewarm water. Warmth accelerated the leavening process, increasing the risk of the dough becoming chametz. The workers are not especially quick in kneading and baking it. The sages forbade kneading the dough even with regular cold water found in cisterns and springs, lest the surrounding ground, which had absorbed the heat of the sun, in turn warmed the water. Therefore, they required that the water be drawn before nightfall and kept overnight in a cool place. Such water is called mayim shelanu. You guys know the Hebrew word lanu. It means hours. In this case, it means something else. Lalun means to sleep overnight. So mayim shelanu is waters that slept. Waters that were kept overnight, because the sages wanted to make sure it's very cold. This water is used to prepare matzot for Pesach. Of course, in places where the climate is warm, you keep it overnight, it's even worse. It would have been better to get it straight from the spring. And so, some maintain one should leave tap water overnight for baking the matzot, since water might be from an open reservoir and may have been warmed by the sun. In practice, this is it's an ancient tradition, but really most making factories making matzah use regular tap water, and as long as it's cool all night, it's no problem to use regular tap water to make the mayim shelanu. You leave it overnight in a cool place, and it won't be hot. But there is a tradition to have special water for the matzah as well, not only special flour. Then,
Can I ask?
yes, please, yeah.
When you talk about sleeping water, which word in Hebrew you use?
Lan,
But to
lanu.
sleep is lishon.
There's an additional word. But the word malon comes from lalun, which is another word for sleeping. Another word.
It's like a
lish.
accommodation.
It's not
But
like
what's the
rest.
difference?
It's like rest, also, yeah. They're very similar meanings, but the concept in the Talmud is called mayim shelanu, that they rested, that they slept overnight. Mayim shelanu. Now, the next thing you have to do when you're baking matzah is to do it quickly. This is where page 173 says, the flour for matzah is ground at least one day before it is needed. Right, malon, right. You have to have the water, go to a hotel. And I want to skip over to the next, the standard. It doesn't say it here. I can't see where it says it. Usually, we make sure that the matzot do not take 18 minutes. 18 minutes from start to finish, from mixing the water into the flour and kneading it and baking it. It's got to be all done within 18 minutes. That's chai. Chai is 18. Right? Chet is 8. Yud is 10. 18.
Yes.
Chai. Regaim. Regaim is the traditional word for minutes. Rega. Rega! Rega! Nowadays we say it means just wait for a second, for a minute. But many times traditionally the word for 1 minute, 60 seconds, was regaim. So chai regaim means, sometimes you'll see that on the package of the matzah. It was baked within 18 minutes. Chai regaim. Matzot yad, that's the hand matzah. Matzot mechona is a machine. So we've used all our special type words for all the words used for different types of matzah. If you've ever been to a matzah factory, you can see, you can go and visit. Some years we've had a tour. We've gone and we've actually baked matzahs ourselves. Last year we did it. Amazing.
Last year
Downstairs.
at the city hall.
In the city, amazing. Right.
We did downstairs.
And you did it here in the
Show you
yeshiva.
the
Amazing. It's great.
I couldn't touch it, only put the
Ah,
paper on the stick.
that's right, because you're not Jewish yet until you convert. You see, until you complete your conversion, you have to have the intention by a Jew for it to be kosher for a mitzvah. Mitzvah have to be baked by a Jew who's obligated by the mitzvot. Until you're Jewish, you're not obligated. But you can participate somehow in preparing the sticks
And
with the paper. We're very careful that every 18 minutes, they shut down the entire operation. Clean it. Floor to ceiling. All the vessels and all the rollers and all the pins and all the surfaces and the oven, everything gets cleaned every 18 minutes. Just to make sure that there's some piece fell somewhere, it won't become chametz. That's why they're called matzot chai regaim. Now you know what matzot yad are and matzot mechona. Mechona means a machine. You know what matzah shmura is. Usually it refers to matzah shmura that are guarded from the time of harvesting. Mishat ketzira. And if it says matzat mitzvah, they had intention in mind that it's for the sake of the matzah, for the Seder night, for the mitzvah of matzah. Matzah ashira, we actually spoke about it a different day. It's when you bake matzah not with water, but with fruit juice. And we said the Ashkenazi custom is that it's not kosher. Except if you're sick. You can't have regular matzah, so you can have matzah ashira. But not for the night of the Seder, unless you're really, really sick. Because the night of the Seder, you have to have lechem oni, bread of affliction, bread of poverty. Ashir means rich. It's not representative of the message we're trying to give, that the Jews were afflicted in Egypt and ate this matzah. Yeah.
Question, why can a person who is sick not eat the matzah with the water? It's hard to chew and stuff?
Digest.
Or
It's hard
digest.
to chew and to digest. It's some people that are sick have the matzah tends to be very hard for old people to digest.
That's why when you eat like 3 matzahs, you already can feel like, oh, you're full, I'm not hungry anymore, right? I notice like when I eat matzah, I feel like, hey, it's like I'm getting
I think it's
full.
because most shmura matzahs, all the flour, mostly it's whole wheat. They don't filter out the bran. So most matzah is whole wheat, and that's why it's you feel it's a little thicker, heavier.
Carbohydrate.
Now
Carbohydrate.
Carbohydrates?
carbohydrates, yeah, it's all carbohydrate, but
Hydrate.
Carbohydrate. It's like eating bread.
it's like eating a lot of bread. Yeah.
Okay.
If you take a look at bottom page 174, the Ashkenazic custom has become universal almost. Bottom page 174 is to Michal, can you read?
From the beginning,
No, the bottom, the last paragraph.
one may not decorate.
No,
The
no.
Ashkenazi.
Yeah, Ashkenazic custom, yeah.
The Ashkenazi custom is to make the matzot thin and hard, so that the heat goes through them thoroughly, and there is hardly any concern that the matzah will become chametz. Some Sephardim make matzah that is about as thick as a finger, while others makes them like thin like wafers, as Ashkenazi do. Since they usually bake them before Pesach, and if they were not wafer-like, they would not last long.
Okay, so most people eat very, very thin matzot because they can prepare it months in advance and it stays fresh. If you put it in a plastic bag, it can stay fresh for a whole year. But the thicker the matzah is, it will taste good. Some Sephardim, they retain their tradition. As you can see, it's only from the Ramah. It's only a few hundred years that the Jews have been making these very, very thin matzot. And they bake it. It takes like in the oven. How long is it in the oven? Maybe 5 seconds, maybe 10 seconds, because the fire is very, very hot and the dough is very, very thin. They're taking them in and out very quickly, and so there's even less and less chance of it becoming chametz. And so we're very, very strict, very stringent about the matter. Most people eat very, very thin matzot, and they bake it again in an oven which is very, very hot, and so that's our tradition. But ultimately, some people have a different tradition, and they say, let's bake the matzah. There's one other thing one other type of matzah which I want to share with you. Usually the term matzat mitzvah is referring to something else. There is a tradition that you should bake the matzah for the mitzvah of eating matzah on the night of the Seder, same day. Erev Pesach. Sometimes it'll say on it, matzat mitzvah, Erev Pesach. Well, it can only say that if you buy it on Erev Pesach. You can go and some people bake matzah, especially on Erev Pesach. Erev Pesach, usually you're busy, you're preparing the house, you're getting the kids ready, you're taking a nap so that you can tell the story at night. But some people are very careful and they want to bake their matzah the night, that day of, they're going to use them. And that way you could make it even a little thicker and it's fresh and it's tastier and you have the intention that it's for tonight, for the mitzvah. So there is some, usually when you say matzat mitzvah, it refers to matzah which was baked on Erev Pesach. And that's some people still do that. I was there. I did it once with a Hasidic Rebbe. It was a scene. People are waiting by the door to buy some.
Yeah.
They spend extra, costs extra money, but some people are very scrupulous about the mitzvot, and they say it's better to bake it the day of Matzat Mitzvah and Erev Pesach. But maybe one day you'll do that. Yes, Ravi.
Suppose I'm going to buy matzot and I have one package left. I put it in the refrigerator. Can I eat it next year?
Sure. No reason not to, other than it might not be so tasty because it's a year old. But if you keep it, if you freeze it, if you keep it sealed tight, it could last for years. And as long as it was made with the intention for matzah, it's made from carefully guarded so that it doesn't become chametz. It can be used next year also. Yeah. Okay, so now that we know about the laws of matzah, let's go back to the Seder night. And we have to talk about eating the matzah. We put it on the Seder plate, you remember? Kadesh urchatz karpas yachat magid. We finished the magid. We're up to rachza. We wash our hands before eating the matzah. Motzi matzah. Now we've got to eat the matzah. What are the laws of how to eat the matzah? Let's open up the page. The page of 242. 242. From page 242 all the way to page 250 are the rules of how to eat the matzah. Once we make sure we bought the right matzah, we have the matzah on the table, we're said the story, now we've got to eat the story, right? We're eating the story. How do we do that? There's rules about it. How much do you have to eat? How quickly do you have to eat it? We already said what should be your posture when you eat the matzah. Leaning, what's that called? Hasava, right? Reclining. You should, but let's see it inside. The mitzvah to eat matzah and maror. Page 242, section 22. Aaron, take it away.
Yes. This is a Torah commandment to.
There is a Torah commandment.
There is a Torah commandment to eat matzah on the night of the 15th of Nisan, as it states. In the evening you shall eat matzah. The matzah must have been guarded, as it states.
Shmura. We just learned this, right? So this is a good review.
And you shall observe the matzot.
Ushmartem. The word shmura is teaching you again. Guard the matzah.
Say it must be made by hand with a specific intention of fulfilling this mitzvah. One who is stolen matzah does not fulfill his obligation.
Don't steal your matzah, okay? Bad news.
Therefore, it is good to pay for the matzah before Pesach, or at least obtain the explicit consent of the store owner to grant the buyer ownership of the matzah, even if it has not yet been paid for. Because if the store owner does not agree to give the matzah on credit, one cannot fulfill his obligation with it. As soon as one is a kazait of shmura matzah, he has fulfilled the Torah commandment, because all eating-related commandments in the Torah require the consumption of at least a kazait. Beyond the Torah obligation, the sages ordained 3 more kazaitim of matzah to be eaten at a seder.
What? Say that again. How much matzah do you have to eat?
3.
The Torah says eat matzah. It means when you 1 olive's kazait size amount of matzah. No, there's a rabbinic tradition that you have to have not one piece, one kazait, but 4. Why 4? Let's hear about it. Let's continue reading after reciting.
After reciting the brachot of hamotzi and achilat matzah, we eat lechatchila.
What's lechatchila? What's lechatchila mean? You have it on your
To
page.
begin with,
Look on your page. Lechatchila. No. Lechatchila. Number 8 on your page. The ideal performance. Number 8. You see it? Lechatchila. What's the opposite of lechatchila?
B'diavad.
B'diavad or b'diavad. What does that mean?
It's like it's good, but it's right.
Acceptable. Minimal fulfillment. You still fulfill the mitzvah, but it's literally means after the fact. It means it's kosher, but not the ideal performance. So lechatchila, you should eat how many kazaitim? How many?
4.
Olive side pieces. So first of all, after making the first 2 brachot, we eat 2 kazaitim. Go ahead.
one from the top matzah for hamotzi, and one from the broken middle matzah for achilat matzah. Later, we eat another kazait with mavo for korech. And at
What's
the
korech?
end, it's like to read.
No, what's korech?
No, 1 second.
Motzi matzah maror korech. What's korech?
Great.
We had it before. What's korech? It's wrapping. It's the wrap, the sandwich.
Oh,
The sandwich. So korech, we have to eat more matzah for the korech. You make a sandwich of matzah with shawarma. No shawarma. No korban pesach. So all we have is the lettuce inside, without the meat. It's a sandwich without the meat.
But you break it, right?
Like the, what's the name?
Charosat. We'll get to it in a minute. No, we shake that off. We don't eat it. It's a sandwich with no meat. All we have is the lettuce, the bitter herb. But anyways, you need matzah. So that's another kazait of matzah, right? Another piece of matzah. And finally, at the end of the meal, go ahead.
And at the end of the meal, we eat one more kazait as the afikomen. Some say it is preferable to eat 2 kazaitim.
When do we eat the afikomen? At the end, what's it called? In the stages of the Seder? Maror korech shulchan orech tzafun barech. The tzafun is when we eat the afikomen.
Yes.
Okay? We did this yesterday. Tzafun is eating the afikomen. Eating the afikomen, nowadays, it's a piece of matzah. Some people say 2 kazaitim of matzah, and therefore, sum total is 5. 2 at the beginning, 1 for korech, and 2 at the end for the afikomen. 5 olive-sized pieces of matzah. Not 4, but 5. If you want to be stringent, you don't really have to. The last one could be only 1 kazait. And so you have 2, 3, 4. Yes?
Why is the tradition to hide it and search it?
Good question. We're going to get to that tradition to hide it, search it, talk about the afikomen in a few moments. Now we're still talking about the technical law, how to fulfill the eating of the matzah on Pesach. Okay, let's keep going. Aaron, go ahead.
Before getting into the specifics of the size of the kazait, let us clarify the practical halacha. There is a consensus that a kazait is about 1/3 of a piece of machine-made matzah and about the same sized piece of handmade matzah. Thus, right after reciting hamotzi and achilat matzah, 2/3 of a machine matzah must be eaten. Another third should be eaten for a korech, and 1 more for the afikomen. For those who are stringent about eating 2 kazaitim for the afikomen, 1/2 of the matzah suffices for the purpose. The kazait of matzah must be eaten continuously. If one pauses while eating, and as a result takes longer than a shi'ur achilat chas to eat a kazait, it does not fulfill the mitzvah. We shall soon discuss exactly how much time a shi'ur achilat chas is, but for now it is enough to say that whoever is a kazait of matzah continuously fulfills the mitzvah without question and need not look at the clock, because the only way it is possible to take longer than achilat chas is if one stops eating for a few minutes.
Now pay attention, because I don't think you're going to be with me on the Seder night. So I want to give you instructions. What the eating of the matzah looks like in my home, and the way it should look in your home. We are doing a mitzvah to eat this matzah. The matzah is the central mitzvah of the night, together with telling the story. And so, if you're going to be serious, if you're going to be careful, at any time during your long meal, it's when you eat the matzah. Don't talk. People take a bite, yummy matzah, better than last year. And the guy says, it tastes a little bit like cardboard. And then the other one starts talking about the weather and, I'm so hungry already. What are you doing? You're in the middle of fulfilling a mitzvah. The mitzvah. You turn your chair sideways, right? You lean, you have to be leaning. You take the matzah, you make 2 brachot. And then, for the next few minutes, however long it takes, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 4 minutes, you are concentrating on eating, not talking. You're not dipping it in anything. You're eating and you're thinking that you want to fulfill the mitzvah, and maybe you're thinking about this is the only time a whole year that it's a mitzvah to eat. You're thinking about what it means to eat, what this special bread means, that you're commemorating the exodus from Egypt, what it means to be a Jew. You're eating. Usually, if you want to eat, there's no rules. You can eat quickly, you can eat slowly, you can stuff it down your mouth. You should be polite, right? This time, we have to focus on eating and imbibing that matzah, 1 kazait, 2 kazaits. That's the mitzvah. So you have to concentrate and not be distracted. And then, when you have the other mitzvah, we're going to talk about the mitzvah of eating maror, and then the mitzvah of korech. Once again, you're eating a matzah together with the maror. And then again, when you eat the afikoman, you see me? I'm leaning. I have to always remember to be leaning. And you're eating. When you're eating, don't interrupt by talking, by doing other things. Eat the matzah. If you do that, then we'll talk about more, a little bit longer, about how much matzah you have to eat. What does that mean? How much is a kazait? Rabbi Menachem said very briefly, 1/3 of a matzah. 1/3 of a matzah, it's not so much, but it's not nothing. So, until you've finished your 1/3 of a matzah, or half a matzah, if you want to be machmir, or 2/3 of a matzah, then you're doing the mitzvah of eating. Mitzvah of eating that Hashem told you, eat the matzah this night, and be careful not to be distracted. Yes?
Just suppose you're sitting on the table, you eat your matzah, you concentrate, you just feel the meaning of why I'm sitting here to eat my matzah, and someone is talking to you, have a question for you, how you need to react at that moment. You are in the middle of your own process, and people around you going like to continue, have questions and moving, and
I would like to believe that when you fulfill the mitzvah, you're doing it with joy. And so you're very happy. And I said you have to be careful and concentrate. I didn't mean you should be sad or nervous. You're very happy. So if someone's talked to you, you can smile at them while you continue to eating. You do what you do. They'll wait for 2 minutes. Nothing will happen. Don't let them get you angry. Don't let them take you out of your concentration. You know that there are some workshops you go to meditate.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes they have a week-long meditation workshop. And they teach you how to do walking meditation. And they also teach you how to do eating meditation. You can eat mindfully when you're actually concentrating on your eating. I think that's what the goal we should be trying to do when we're eating our matzah. We should be mindful, and there's children. There's things that happen. Not everybody came to Machon Meir and they know how important it is to eat the matzah. They'll do what they do, but you do what you should be doing. It only takes 2, 3 minutes, 4 minutes, and then you'll respond afterwards.
I used to shut my eyes when I make it.
Also, good idea. Good idea.
And the people, when they look at me, they know.
That's
Either
right.
way.
Good idea. Good idea. Why not? Shut your eyes. It's a good idea. Okay, other questions? Other comments? So far, so good? All right, now, how much is a kazait?
An olive, like same size
The
as
size of an olive. That's what the words mean. Zait is an olive. Zait, like an olive. However, briefly, we only have a minute. We'll start today, we'll continue tomorrow. The long exile gave rise to uncertainty regarding the size of a kazait. On page 243. According to Rambam, a kazait is slightly less than a third of a volume of an egg. According to Tosfot, it's about the volume of half an egg. Have you ever seen an olive the size of a half an egg?
Not yet.
Maybe.
Depends which egg, like an egg for small
A
birds.
chicken egg. Maybe.
During the time of,
There are different size olives.
Spice, it's a different.
I'll tell you. I think it's quite clear that the Tosfot, where did they live?
In France?
That's right, France.
Family for Rashi.
Probably in the time of Rashi, right, and a little bit afterwards, 11th century, 12th century, probably 13th century. Probably they never saw an olive in their life. Olives are a Middle Eastern fruit. They don't grow in the northern countries like France and Germany.
But
Import and export was not so easy in those days. And so they were trying to reconstruct, based on the Talmud, comparing different passages in the Talmud, how big an olive is without having ever seen an olive. And so that's why there's some difference of opinions here about exactly how big it is and how big it's supposed to be. It makes a little more sense to follow the Rambam on this one. A third of an egg, it's also a little bit big, but it's possible. And the Rambam probably did see olives.
Maybe at that time the eggs are very small.
Yeah, we're going to get into that. That made people, all sorts of theories have been produced to try to navigate this issue of how big an olive is. Part of it was based on for many years the Jews never saw olives, and that's where the Jews were living their Judaism, and so they had to get a definition without ever from the books and not from reality. But of course now we have olives and we can see how big they are.
But
And,
France also has several Mediterranean islands. I think the climate could be similar to Mediterranean.
It could be. I'm not sure 100% that this is correct. It makes some sense to me. And there are some indications also in some of the sources where they actually say, I've never seen an olive, but this is how big it is. So we're going to continue tomorrow discussing how much matzah you have to eat, 4 olive size or 5 sizes of an olive of matzah, how that gets translated to our hand matzahs and our machine-made matzahs. Be'ezrat Hashem, to be continued tomorrow. Be'ezrat Hashem. Okay.